Hey, good morning, everyone. How are you? It is time for Mantra Monday. It is already May 11th. The spring is flying by, and we have been focusing on the Sikshastakam by Chaitanya, the Saint Chaitanya, who left 8 composed verses in the 16th century. So he was active in the late 1400s to the middle 1500s. He departed this world at the age of 48 years old. And as I've mentioned before, there are a lot of wonderful biographies about him. Let's see if I can get this lighting together just a little bit better. I don't know if I can. Come in close while we're waiting. Okay, hang on one moment. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So at any rate, he only left 8 verses, composed verses. And as I've mentioned before, he was an extremely dynamic individual. So it's pretty amazing that he only left 8 verses. So when a great personality like this leaves a condensed form of instructions, it is to be understood that the entire, raison d'être, the entire philosophy has been broken down or, condensed in a way and been left for us to unpack. So I'm going to get into it. Let's see if I can. And I am using the voluminous Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which was written by Kṛṣṇa Das Kaviraj and was completed in the year 1615. That corresponds to the Western calendar. Okay, so this comes in the last chapter, or the last chapters, which is called Antya, and these verses come at a time when Chaitanya is living out the last 12 years of his life, really isolated from the world at large, and is only accompanied by 2 very intimate associates. And he is really experiencing some profound mysticism. So that's the mood. Okay, so last week we did verse 29, which was Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitram Ya Jagad Isha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishvare Bhavatad Bhaktir I Haituki Tvayi. O Lord of the universe, I do not desire material wealth, materialistic followers, a beautiful wife, or fruitive activities described in flowery language. All I want, life after life, is unmotivated devotional service unto you. And this week, as the, of course nothing's really ancillary, but the ancillary verses that's leading up to part 5 today, Chaitanya is expressing a great deal of humility because he is realizing his position in the material world, in the cycle of birth and death and grief that we find ourselves in. So he says, Ayi nanda-tanuja kiṅkaram patitam viṣame bhavāmbudhau kṛpayā tava pāda-paṅkaja sthita-dhūlī-sadṛśaṁ vicintaya. So I'm going to repeat that. Ayi nanda-tanuja kiṅkaram patitam viṣame bhavāmbudhau kṛpayā tava pāda-paṅkaja sthita-dhūlī-sadṛśaṁ vicintaya. So the word for word translation for that is, Ai, O my Lord, nanda-tanuja, the son of Nanda Mahārāja, Kṛṣṇa, kiṅkaram, the servant, patitam, fallen, mam, me, viṣame, horrible, bhava-ambudhau, in the ocean of nescience, kṛpayā, by causeless mercy, tava, your, pāda-paṅkaja, lotus feet, sthita, situated at, dhūlī-sadṛśaṁ, like a particle of dust, vicintaya, kindly consider. O my Lord, O Kṛṣṇa, son of Nanda Mahārāja, I am your eternal servant, but because of my own fruitive acts, I have fallen into this horrible ocean of nescience. Now please be causelessly merciful to me. Consider me a particle of dust at your lotus feet. I think that's worth repeating. O my Lord, O Kṛṣṇa, son of Nanda Mahārāja, I am your eternal servant, but because of my own fruitive acts, I have fallen into this horrible ocean of nescience. Now please be causelessly merciful to me. Consider me a particle of dust at your lotus feet. Good morning. Good morning. Just getting started here. Make a comment so I know who it is. I hope you had a good Mother's Day. If you have your mom still around, that you cherished her, and that if she's not around, you cherished her memory. So I'm going to break it down now. You'll notice in the event cover photo that I put, hey Rosie, good morning. I've been thinking about you. Nice to see you here. So you'll notice that the photo that I put in the event cover for this morning is a image of Kṛṣṇa, little toddler, with a pair of wooden sandals on his feet, balancing them on his head, and he is bringing them to the devotee who is in that rasa, or is playing the role of his father, his eternal father, Nanda Mahārāja. Of course, Kṛṣṇa lives in Vrindavan, which is a pastoral setting. It's a beautiful, peaceful setting, and he spends his time when he's older tending to the cows and protecting them and playing with his friends, and then coming home to a very, very loving household, to his parents, Yashoda and Nanda. So that's in context that in this eternal Leela, in this eternal spiritual manifest pastimes in the spiritual world in Goloka Vrindavan that are also acted out here in the material universe, and actually in various material universes. We're not the only one. These pastimes go on from universe to universe to universe to help attract the living entities, to attract the jivas back home, to give them a glimpse and a remembrance of how wonderful it is. So that's the image that we see there. So Chaitanya is saying, I am your eternal servant, but because of fruitive acts, I have fallen into this horrible ocean of nescience. So the wonderful feature of spiritual interactions or pastimes with the Supreme is that they are variegated. We can interact with the Lord as a friend. We can interact with the Lord in a conjugal mood, Madhurya Rasa. We can interact with the Lord in a parental mood. We can interact with the Lord in the mood of servitorship, Dasyarat. There's even a rasa of interacting with the Lord in the mood of neutrality. So that would be, the creepers and the trees and the grass and the flowers and so forth that are fully conscious and manifest living in the spiritual world. So that's another mood. So every soul has an inherent rasa, or an inherent constitutional position in relationship to the Lord and in his Leela. So Chaitanya here is taking the mood of an ordinary conditioned soul, like you and me, and is saying, but because of my own fruitive acts, so in other words, he's taking responsibility. He's owning up to the fact that it was his idea, it was his action, it was his own fruitive activities. In other words, it was his own desire for the things that he's eschewing in the previous verses, for material wealth, for all these temporal things that we think are going to make us happy in this world, apart from pure spiritual consciousness and pure spiritual activity that gets us into this kind of hot water. And the hot water is, I have fallen into this horrible ocean of nescience. So there's a lot of talk in the spiritual community and about waking up, right? About reaching your full potential, about spreading the light, or like if you follow the work of Dolores Cannon, for example, she talks a lot about the fact that when we choose to come here, or when we come here, there is, they say that, she says that there's like an agreement, or rather there is a condition in that we will be forgetful. We won't actually remember who we are and where we came from, and neither will anybody else, right? So we spend our time here trying to remember that, and going through lots of trials and tribulations in many cases, trying to do that. So nescience, the state of nescience is actually a state of forgetfulness, and it does cause a lot of confusion and a lot of pain. So even on a more accessible example, they say that if you don't know your history, and that if you don't know where you come from, if you don't know your ancestry, right, you're going to be a human being that is lost, that doesn't have a sense of purpose, because you don't know where you are from. So in these examples, because I'm talking about things on the absolute platform and a purely spiritual example, it is important to know that we also have a spiritual identity, that we do have a spiritual lineage that is beyond, that is detached from this material world, from these material circumstances, that we are actually free in a state of liberation, and that when we are reinstated in that, this whole situation here, all this pain and the turbulence that we experienced here will just seem like a bad dream. It will seem like a fleeting moment once we are reinstated. So of course, while we're here, time, can drag on, or as you get older, pass very quickly. But time ultimately is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord, Kala. So we have to learn how to get into that time, to get into that internal atmosphere. In other words, if we make friendship and we approach and have an intimate relationship with that Supreme Person, with God, who is in fact time itself, then we will find ourselves interacting in the internal potency, such as a devotee like Nanda Mahārāja. So there is Maya, right? There is the external energy, which is illusory, and then there is Mahamaya, and that is different. That is the Lord's spiritual potency, where he actually tampons down that feeling of awe and reverence that we as jivas and as living entities are inclined to have in the presence of God, right? Because he's so great. So in order to actually engender intimacy and more loving exchanges, Kṛṣṇa actually makes the devotees forget his position, because he He knows what his position is. It's not, interestingly enough, the Lord doesn't have a false ego in the way that we have. He is purely love. So, while he is perfectly aware that he is great, and while he is perfectly aware of all his opulences, of all beauty, all strength, all knowledge, all renunciation, all wealth, and all strength, when you're trying to have a personal, intimate relationship with someone, and they are constantly reminded of that, it gets in the way of having a relationship. So that is the context there. So we have fallen into this horrible ocean of nescience, this cycle, of birth and death and being separated from those that we love again and again and again and again. And we want to get out of that. So he is pleading and saying, now please be causelessly merciful to me. So causeless mercy, what does that phrase mean? It means an act of kindness, an act of mercy, which does not create any more fruitive reactions. It is unhinged, it is unglued, it is detached, it has nothing to do with the cycle of birth and death at all. It is causeless. Why? Because the Lord himself is causeless. He has no cause. This can be a hard thing for us to wrap our minds around, because everything that we know of has a beginning and an end. We have a beginning and an end here, at least in this atmosphere. But in the spiritual realm, and certainly with the original person, there is no beginning and end. That's why the Lord is referred to as Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. So this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is referencing here. And then he says, consider me to be a particle of dust at your lotus feet. This means, please, I know that I'm insignificant. I know that I'm insignificant in the scheme of things, in the scheme of your majesty. Please, let me be attached somehow to your lotus feet. So what does this mean, lotus feet, right? So in Vedic culture, when you are approaching the guru, you're approaching the spiritual master, the disciple, right, the student, will approach the spiritual master with folded palms to offer their respects, but also will touch the feet of the spiritual master. Why is he doing that? Because when you touch the feet of the spiritual master, it actually releases fruitive activities or karmic reactions. Excuse me. So this is actually a great mercy and a great austerity that the teacher, that the guru is extending to the student. He is sacrificing his own comfort, actually, by taking on the reactions that we are, how shall I say, due, right, by being here. In other words, my own fruitive acts. So fruitive activity can take on two forms, basically. It can either take on the form of good karma, or it can take on the form of bad karma. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here, he's not interested in so-called good karma, and he's not interested in so-called bad karma. He's interested in no karma whatsoever. So when you touch the feet of the spiritual master, or when you take initiation from the spiritual master is actually taking on those reactions that you would have had. So this is why this beautiful image of the Lord's lotus feet is there, and wanting to cling to the Lord's lotus feet and be acknowledged, like a particle of dust. When we look into the night sky and we see all the stars and we get a glimpse, of what is here, just in this one little universe, right? We feel in awe, and we also realize, my goodness, I am just a little person, I am just a little speck on this little planet that is just one amongst innumerable planets in this universe, right? But Chaitanya knows that there are multiverses, there are multi-universes, there are innumerable living entities, and that's just here in the material world. In the spiritual world, there's even more. So it is said in the Vedas that the jivas that are here in the material world only make up a quarter of the population. So even if you just start to think about that, according to what I've just put forth or explained, it's pretty mind-boggling. So again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the embodiment of humility, and his mission is to demonstrate to us that quality of humility, which is so important in making spiritual progress. But the beauty also of his humility is that when you read these verses, you can ascertain, you can feel that he is also experiencing a kind of an ecstasy, right? Remember, he has come in the mood of Srimati Radharani, ecstatic love and separation. So I'm just going to go ahead and read some of the ancillary verses, or the ancillary conversation here to the Sikshastakam, to the key 8 verses. So he says, Kripakari karamore pāda-dhūlī-sadṛśaṁ tomara sevaka koram tomara sevana puna ati utkanta dainyaha ila udgama Kṛṣṇa tani magi prema nama sankirtana. So he says, I am your eternal servant, but I forgot your lordship. Now I have fallen into the ocean of nescience and have been conditioned by the external energy. Be causelessly merciful to me by giving me a place with the particles of dust at your lotus feet, so that I may engage in the service of your lordship as your eternal service. And then the commentary is, natural humility and eagerness then awoke in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He prayed to Kṛṣṇa to be able to chant the Maha Mantra in ecstatic love. So this is the progressive mood. These verses are unfolding in a beautiful, beautiful way. And, every week we get to relish the mellows of the mood of what it actually is to be on that platform of pure ecstatic love, of pure devotional service. So it's not possible, actually, to feel this way constantly, right? We may feel this way for a moment, right? I'm sure that we've all had those moments where you see, a sunset, or you see a shooting star, or perhaps the birth of a child, or a field of flowers, or birds flying overhead, or a double rainbow. All these messages and all these ways in which the Lord speaks to us and tries to speak to us here. And we just feel so in awe, and for a moment we feel that happiness, and we feel that oneness, and we feel that kind of an ecstasy, in seeing that. And then in the next moment we've completely forgotten it, because we've got to get going somewhere, or someone's broken our reverie, or something shows up to annoy us, and we've completely forgotten that. So what we're hoping for and what we are striving for is to actually be on this platform where the mood is unbroken, and that we are always swimming in the mellows of ecstatic love. always. That we are always able to experience this eternal Leela in our hearts. This is actually possible. It sounds far-fetched maybe, it may sound crazy, but the spiritual world and the spiritual dimensions that are available to us are manyfold. So that's what I wanted to leave you with today. I hope that you had a wonderful Mother's Day. I posted on my Instagram what we did here for Mother's Day in our home. I know that many of our mothers have moved on, Rosie, and this can be a very poignant and bittersweet day. We remember all the good times that our mothers afforded us, the way she protected us, the way she loved us, the way she gave to us. Selflessly, sacrificing in so many ways, in ways that we didn't even know. It says that, I'm trying to pull myself together here. It is said that in the material world, that a mother's love is the closest thing, to pure love, to unconditional love. So through the love of a mother, we actually get a glimpse of this spirituality, this spiritual love. Hopefully we've had a good mother, and we have experienced that, and that is a love, and that is a strength and an impetus that we can draw upon throughout our lives. Emotional. Also, I want to let you know that on my Instagram account, I have been slowly adding highlights as a way to better engage with you. And there is a new highlight that I posted about the 7 mothers. So in the Vedas, or in wisdom culture, there's actually 7 mothers to be considered. One of them is our own native mother, number 1. Number 2 is the nurse, that is also considered a mother. Number 3 is the wife of the Brahmin. That would be someone who's learned, right? In cosmic law, for example. The wife of the Brahmin should be respected as the mother. The wife of the spiritual master, the wife of our own guru, should be respected. Also, let's see, Mother Earth should be respected. The cow is also a mother. And I am forgetting one. I am forgetting one mother. Let me see. Our own mother, the nurse, the wife of the Brahmin. The wife of the king. Not that we really have kings these days, but you get the idea, The wife of whoever is supposed to be taking care of us, on a state level, or on a federal level, or like in the old days on a global level, should also be given that respect. If they're doing their jobs properly, they are seeing the citizens in that way. They are seeing the citizens like their own children, and that is actually the dharma, the duty or the responsibility of those personalities that are in positions of leadership, to see the citizens like their children and to attend to their welfare for their material well-being and, of course, absolutely, their spiritual well-being amongst all people, right? Being equal to all. So that is what I have for you today for Mantra Monday. I will be on Instagram at 9:35 a.m. this morning because I'm going to be doing Mantra Mondays there on a weekly basis. I've got about 600 people, or I don't know, at least 500 people over there on Instagram that also need nurturing and to be tended to. So I hope that you have a beautiful week. I'm also going to post a link to the 7 Mothers. That's a mantra that I have on my YouTube channel, but I'm going to post the link to the YouTube channel here so you can watch that. Thank you very, very much for spending some time with me today. I really, really appreciate it. It brings a lot of focus to my week, a focus to my life. I hope it does for you. And I am your servant. It is my honor and my privilege to be able to serve up mantras to you in this way on a weekly basis. And so until I see you again next week, be well and stay safe.